too late. Jay Powell didn't reduce interest rates. Bitcoin's hanging out north of 100,000 with interest rates artificially high. So I do think that it's similar to 2007 or 8 as well as 2020. Second thing, Jim Chanos, probably the best short seller of all time, and he's going to become a Bitcoiner. All right, several things I'm bullish about. One, too late. Jay Powell didn't reduce interest rates. And, Bitcoin will never have to be at the whims of too late Jay Powell, but also Bitcoin hanging out, north of 100,000 with interest rates artificially high. So love that. Second thing, we've got a beautiful debate that got accepted today between Jim Chanos and the accountant himself, Pierre Rochard. So I think it's very bullish that Jim Chanos has been brought into the Bitcoin just fear of Pierre Rochard. Like the fact that Pierre Rochard, by kind of having a dialogue with Jim Chanos. For people that don't know Jim Chanos, he's probably like the probably the best short seller of all time, and he's shorting the companies like MicroStrategy and basically hedging it with Bitcoin. So he's, but it's just beautiful that he's going to be debating Pierre Rochard, and I hope that Pierre waxes him. But it's bullish that that's happening. That's where Bitcoin is these days.
I want to jump back then, Parker. There was the other thing that you touched on too with the Fed not cutting today. And again, in this high interest environment, because for a long time of speculation that, Bitcoin required constant M2 supply. We saw it contracting. It needed low interest rates. We had a high interest rate environment, especially on a relative term to the trend over the last 40 years. There's one thing that I picked up on, but it could be completely me just projecting. So this is not fair, right? It could be just my biased view of this. I'm curious your thoughts. There's something around, like we've had the yield curve inverted for so long. It feels in a lot of places, I think it's similar in the US, at least in some industries, like with airlines, but like in Canada, it feels like a recession. It does not feel good. It's been hurting. And we've had a previously high, very, very inflationary time. This all feels very reminiscent to me of 2008. To like Chancellor on the brink. We have conflict in the Middle East. If I remember correctly, in 2008 too, they were concerned about inflation. They were concerned about inflation going up. It wasn't going the other way. And so with the way that markets are currently sitting, with the Fed holding, I'm curious if any of this is reminiscent to different times for you, Parker, or just how you view things progressing over the next year or two.
I mean, I do think that it's similar to 2007 or 8 as well as 2020, is that the Fed is always almost necessarily behind, that it's difficult for a central bank to reduce interest rates when the S&P 500, it's not at its all-time high, but it's near it. Yeah. But at the same time, I do think that the underlying the underarching economy is extremely leveraged, and so high rates are destroying different parts of the economy unequally and suffocating anything that's dependent on leverage. Like the housing markets, auto market. And so I think it's that something's going to break eventually. I think CEO of JP Morgan signaled that if they don't act soon, it will break. But realistically, as the Fed always acts, that something has to have demonstrated that it's broken for the Fed to act. It's reactionary, not because they're stupid, because they almost need an excuse. They need to be seen as people not questioning, why, because people can say inflation's coming down, but food inflation is just as high. So it's hard to lower interest rates and spike inflation when people are struggling still at the gas station, food at the grocery store, which are the two most basic things that people need every day. And it just so happens that the Fed excludes that from its inflation tracker. So ultimately, I do see parallels, and there's parallels for very logical reasons.
Beautiful. TC, I'm curious, and then Rob, maybe I'll throw it to you. TC, do you think that the Fed is going to screw this up and that they might print more dollars?
I think there's a few immovable forces in the universe, and one of them is that the debt has to continue to balloon, and that the purchasing power of the dollar and all fiat currencies has to continue to be debased. These are trends that are not going to change at any point. What a lot of people don't realize is that lowering interest rates is horribly inflationary. And so all the people that are rooting for lower interest rates right now, including the president, they're essentially rooting for higher cost of living for everyone. It's just a no-brainer. And amidst all of that, you have Bitcoin emerging on the global stage, and still a shocking about 99% of human race that just doesn't understand what they're looking at. They perceive this thing as risk. They perceive it as speculation. The FUD that's been broadcast for over a decade has been quite successful at convincing people that Bitcoin is just a risk thing, when in truth, it is a safety asset. It is something that actually can help you take action in this environment. And this is the most frustrating, I think, thing for Bitcoiners, which is you talk to people in your life that you care about, your close friends, your family, and they all will admit how bad it is out there right now. And it's still so hard to make a breakthrough, to get people to see this thing that they've been told is so risky, that it's actually a safe haven. And so I think that's essentially the opportunity in Bitcoin as a whole. It's just this arbitrage between just misconception and misdirection and misunderstanding, and the truth, which you can verify yourself. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
I completely agree. And even, one thing I want to tag on to this too, and then Rob, I want to get your thoughts on this, is I'm very concerned over the current escalating conflict in the Middle East. But the idea that kind of sticks in the back of my mind is I can't tell if they're potentially gunning for a war because they need to print, or they're going to gun for a war and then then they're going to have to print. Like, I'm not really sure which one comes first. If this might be a kind of excuse to do what they want to do, or it will later excuse what they need to do anyways. Rob, market outlook, any of that, your thoughts?
Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FITSCRIPT. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan: nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FITSCRIPT and see what's possible.
Yeah, one of the things I'm fundamentally bullish about Bitcoin is we never have to wait for an FOMC meeting to know what's going to happen in the next block, right? Just at first principles, the idea that the world markets turn to a man, to understand where the interest rates are going to go for the price of money. I agree, Parker, the Fed's always a lagging indicator. Their alleged independence prevents them from being the one to actually take strong leadership to do things. They have to wait for that permission structure. So it's interesting now in an age of prediction markets, you can actually see where markets are betting on if it's going to be no change or, a 25 BIP or a 50 BIP rate cut. Ultimately, it doesn't matter in the grand scale of, Bitcoin's continual march forward in dominance. In that long list of Parker bullish things that he listed off, I just want to also shout out to the Maple AI crew, getting Bitcoin payments and getting that turned on to the Bitcoin App Store. Like Maple AI, really cool project of being able to, they use secure enclaves for end-to-end encryption for your communication with large language models. You can actually get private chat in a way that's in a more open way where you don't have to worry about intermediaries or them as a service provider kind of poking in and trying to understand what you're using and harvesting you for your data. So really, really cool progress there. And also kind of quickly aligning on the recent changes from the Apple Store with their court cases and settlements to get Bitcoin in there. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for it to fully shake out with app cycle updates and releases and people pushing the boundaries. But that's a whole new venue too for Bitcoin payments, just natively within these apps now, with that Apple no longer kind of sitting there as toll keeper and kind of micro controlling everything. There's a lot of great opportunity to be growing there.
Which, quick question, you guys might know this as well too, but what is the share of the market that Apple currently has? Because it's got to be like a massive percentage of people that didn't have access to Bitcoin payments through the App Store that is now potentially being onboarded, like a whole new group of cohort.
Within the United States, it's roughly I think 50-50 globally. But if you actually look at the United States, Canada, Europe, I think it's very heavily skewed 75-25 for Apple, if not more. I should probably go look at a number real quick.
Either way, it's massive. I apologize, Rob. I interrupted you, but I couldn't help but think about how massive that actually might be, and completely just something that might be overlooked by most people.
No, yeah, exactly. And you would think about it too, for a lot of Bitcoin's great for digital native products as a digital native money, right?
Yeah.
So being able to kind of like, a lot of app store consumer purchases are just digital goods. Maybe you're ordering something on Amazon on your phone, but a lot of time you're buying something within the app store, it's something digital. Bitcoin payments is an obvious synergy there for sure.
100%, 100%. Gentlemen, we are getting close to the top of the hour, but before I go, I did want to dive into the other thing that Parker talked about. I missed this debate. Can you explain a little bit more what's going on with Pierre?
Yeah, so
Chanos.
so Jim Chanos, legendary short seller, well-respected guy, thoughtful guy. I think it's great because it's going to draw him into Bitcoin, and then he's going to become a Bitcoiner. But over the last several days, or maybe like last week or two, Jim Chanos announced that he was shorting MicroStrategy and that he was hedging it by being long Bitcoin. So he's basically trying to short the premium above the net asset value of Bitcoin that MicroStrategy holds. And Pierre started chirping at him on Twitter in a respectful way, like, Pierre is very respectful, was respectful chirping. He was making good points. And Jim Chanos started responding. I saw the first one like 3 or 4 days ago, and I was like, oh, that's cool that Jim Chanos is responding to Pierre's criticism of Pierre was explaining to him why he was making a very risky trade that he didn't fully understand. And then so that's been going on for a few days. Pierre continues to engage with Jim Chanos. Jim Chanos re-engages or engages back, and then somebody suggested today in the Twitter thread that there should be a debate between Jim and Pierre on Preston Pish's podcast. And Preston asked him, he's like, let's do it. And Jim Chanos made a funny comment like, my mother told me never to go to a fight that you're invited to, but in this case, I'll make an exception. And so I don't know. I don't believe there's a date yet set, but the debate has been agreed to as of today. So I think that the debate will be whether, ultimately Bitcoin will be at the heart of it, because Jim Chanos is making a bet that, when Bitcoin goes down, these treasury or Bitcoin fiat arbitrage companies will go down by more, or even if they don't, that they would need to compress over time. But that Bitcoin will be at the heart of the debate, because Jim Chanos doesn't have an opinion about Bitcoin, but now he's necessarily going to need one for this debate. So I think it's great.
That's wonderful. He's going to have to do his homework. He's going to have to read Gradually Then Subtly to prepare.
Hopefully he does. Yeah.
You should.
He absolutely should. It's funny, guys, because it's at the end of the day, it feels like, and I'm sure you're all in the same boat. Everybody's going to come to Bitcoin in their own time and through different channels. We've almost hit on so many of them here. Like Jim Chanos is getting dragged in through financial markets and also having a little scuffle on Twitter. We've got art that could be inspirational and interesting people that drags them in as well too, or even going to the earlier part of the conversation with Rob, the different tools and features. You might be using something with Bitcoin and not even realize it. It could be a new app in the App Store that's just powered by Bitcoin or Liquid or something else under the hood.
Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC sessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions.